Have you ever looked at someone who seems entirely unaffected by the chaos of life and wondered what their secret is? You know the type of person. They get turned down for a date, passed over for a promotion, or sharply criticized by a stranger, and they just shrug it off. They don't spiral into a frantic 3-aim existential crisis. They don't spend the next 4 business days replaying the conversation in the shower, analyzing every micro-expression to figure out where they went wrong. Instead, they just experience a brief, normal moment of disappointment, process the emotion, and move on with their life. For a long time, you might have assumed these people were either emotionally detached or just incredibly lucky. You might have wondered what impenetrable armor they are wearing that you somehow missed out on. But it is not armor, and it is certainly not luck. What you are witnessing is the quiet, invisible power of a solid, healthy sense of self. In the world of deep psychological healing, understanding this concept is perhaps one of the most profound insights you can gain about the nature of the human mind. Imagine your sense of self as a physical object resting right in the center of your chest. For a person with a healthy psychology, that object is like a dense, heavy sphere of solid steel. When the inevitable earthquakes of life happen, when a romantic partner decides to end the relationship, when a friend snaps at them, or when someone is just outright rude, their internal building shakes. But the foundation absolutely does not crack. When someone breaks up with them, they definitely experience the pain of rejection. They feel sadness. They lean on their support systems, they cry, and they process their grief naturally. But throughout that entire painful ordeal, their fundamental belief in their own intrinsic worth remains completely untouched. They don't overreact with defensive rage, and they don't crumble into a puddle of worthlessness. Their identity is an unshakable fortress. But what if that doesn't sound like your internal world at all? What if, for you, a minor critique from your partner doesn't just feel like a simple request, but rather an aggressive, devastating unmasking of your deepest flaws? What if getting rejected by someone you are attracted to feels less like a simple mismatch and more like absolute, undeniable proof that you are fundamentally broken? If your mind operates this way, you are not overreacting, and you are not inherently dramatic. Your brain is simply trying to survive a completely different internal reality. You are likely operating with what therapists call a highly fragmented sense of self, deep within the unconscious mind. Many people harbor a heavy, silent emotional belief known as a shame schema. This isn't just a fleeting thought. It is a persistent, underlying narrative whispering devastating things on a loop. It tells you, there is something inherently wrong with me. I am weird. I am not good enough. I am unlovable. I am small. I am a freak. When this is your psychological baseline, the core in your chest isn't a solid sphere of steel, it is a shattered mirror. It is highly fractured, remarkably delicate, and constantly on the verge of splintering further under the slightest pressure. And because no human being can survive walking through the world feeling utterly exposed and fundamentally problematic, your mind does something incredibly resourceful to protect you. It builds elaborate solutions to hide the fractures. These solutions become your personality, your defenses, and the mask you wear every single day. Think about the fiercely independent stoic who refuses to ever ask for help, or the wildly successful entrepreneur who grinds themselves into exhaustion to build an empire. Society loves to praise these behaviors, calling them driven, resilient, or ambitious. But often, beneath that shiny veneer of untouchable success, there is a terrified inner self using achievement as a desperate shield. You don't necessarily strive to be a high-achieving CEO just because you love the work. You strive for it because if you are universally recognized as powerful and successful, maybe no one will ever notice the fractured, unworthy, deeply problematic self hiding underneath. Your entire existence becomes a brilliantly engineered compensation tactic to keep the world from seeing the truth you believe about yourself. This is exactly why everyday social risks feel so astronomically high, and why your nervous system treats minor interactions like life or death scenarios. Let's say you decide to approach someone you really like at a nightclub or a coffee shop. For someone with a solid core, hearing the word no simply means the other person isn't interested. But for someone with a fragmented sense of self, that no is an absolute psychological catastrophe. If they reject you, your subconscious mind instantly interprets it as a fatal exposure. The rejection pierces right through your carefully constructed defenses, shattering the illusion of the confident, put-together person you have been performing as. Suddenly, your deep-seated belief that you are a weirdo or not good enough is yanked violently into the spotlight. Your defenses completely collapse, and the raw, vulnerable, fragmented self you have spent years hiding is laid bare. Your brain convinces you that everyone can see it, and it feels like emotional agony. You don't even have to leave the safety of your own home for these fragile defenses to be severely tested. Imagine you are standing in your kitchen, and your partner asks entirely politely if you could help out a little more with washing the dishes or taking out the trash. To an intact core, this is a mundane logistical request about household chores. To a fragmented core, it is a psychological trigger wire. Instantly, you are transported back to a time when you were made to feel incredibly small and insignificant. Perhaps a hypercritical parent constantly berated you. Perhaps you suffered abuse, or maybe you were relentlessly bullied in the past. Your partner's simple request bypasses your adult logic and strikes that old, unhealed wound with startling precision. The fragmented self is exposed once again, feeling targeted and small. As a result, you might lash out in a spiraling rage or withdraw into a deep, silent shame, completely baffling your partner who only wanted a little help with the plates. This internal fracturing also completely hijacks your ability to set boundaries with the people around you. Have you ever agreed to do a massive favor for someone, knowing full well you didn't have the time, the energy, or the desire, simply because the word no felt physically impossible to force out of your mouth? People with an intact core have absolutely no problem setting boundaries because saying no doesn't threaten their fundamental identity. But if you have an unconscious shame schema, your brain actively convinces you that saying no will reveal your true awful nature to the world. The internal logic dictates, if I say no to you, then that is going to expose how bad I am. I am a bad person if I disappoint you. So you perform. You agree. You twist yourself into exhausting shapes to keep everyone else happy, terrified that if you drop the ball, they will realize you are flawed and abandon you. Living this way is a profound kind of exhaustion. You are essentially spending all of your finite mental energy acting as the full-time security guard for your own internal brokenness. But here is the most important, liberating truth you will ever hear about your mind. A fragmented sense of self is not a life sentence. It is a learned psychological injury, and just like a physical injury, it can be entirely healed. One of the greatest things you can ever do for yourself is to engage in deep therapeutic work to heal that fragmented core. The ultimate goal of therapy isn't just to teach you surface-level coping mechanisms or how to take deep breaths when you feel annoyed. The true goal is to fundamentally repair the fracture. It is to take that shattered glass in your chest and melt it back down into a solid, unbreakable core. Imagine what it would feel like to walk through the world without the constant, crushing weight of having to prove your worth to everyone you meet. Imagine setting a boundary without feeling a single drop of lingering guilt. Imagine experiencing rejection and realizing, with absolute peaceful clarity, that it says absolutely nothing about your value as a human being. When your core becomes solid, the relentless, exhausting performance finally stops. You no longer need to be the smartest person in the room, the most successful earner, or the most accommodating friend just to feel safe in your own skin. You become genuinely real. You become the kind of person who listens without waiting for your turn to speak, who connects without trying to impress, and who rests in the quiet, unshakable confidence that they are enough. You can finally stop fighting a desperate war against yourself. If this resonated with you and made you look at your own mind differently, hit subscribe, because understanding your own psychology is the very first step to changing it forever.